Stories are a common feature of our everyday existence. We will continually reflect on the question, why do I need a story to live by? In this video we will explore some of the sacred stories of Christianity, alongside the key characters, Jesus, Peter, and Paul. Where are Christian sacred stories found? Often they are in the Bible, but that is not the only source. The history of the religion itself can even be interpreted as a sacred story, and many places of worship have a story attached to them. Like any story, the Christian story has key characters. Many of the early religious figures are shared with the Jewish faith, for example Noah, Abraham, and Moses. The Christian story differs from the Jewish story at the point of entry of Jesus, a Jewish man, about whom there are many stories in the New Testament of the Bible. We will look at Christian sacred stories concerning the key characters Jesus, Peter, and Paul. The sacred stories of the Bible form the basis of Christian belief that Jesus was and is the Son of God. The image on your screen is from a BBC documentary, which aimed to work out what Jesus might have looked like, given the features of other men who lived at the time he did in the same area. The way in which Jesus has been portrayed in imagery across the ages forms a part of the sacred story of Jesus for Christians today. But what does the Bible say about Jesus? We know that much of the New Testament was written over the course of a century, from around 30 years after Jesus' death. The New Testament has two parts: the Gospels, which tell the story of Jesus, and the letters, which are written as guidance for the early Christian communities. The Gospels each present Jesus' story in a different way, and have a different intended purpose. They are not written as biographies of Jesus, but rather to convey the meaning of Jesus' life and teachings to different groups of people. The Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, though each is not thought to be written by only one person, let alone a person called Matthew, Mark, or Luke, were written using similar source materials, and therefore have many similarities. They are known as the Synoptic Gospels. The Gospel of John, on the other hand, is quite different. It is more symbolic and has a number of themes. One of these is the series of signs of Jesus, his miraculous undertakings. This Gospel emphasizes Jesus' divinity. Peter was perhaps Jesus' closest follower. He was certainly the person with whom Jesus entrusted the continuation of his message. The story goes that Jesus appointed Peter as leader of the disciples, and therefore of the church, and the Bible verse on your screen has been interpreted by Catholic tradition as equating Peter with the rock on which Jesus builds the church. Peter's name had originally been Simon, but was changed by Jesus to Peter. Catholic tradition therefore holds that Peter was the first pope, and that there is an unbroken chain of popes. Peter appears in many stories of the Gospel, some of which emphasize his failings in understanding Jesus or in denying that he was Jesus' follower. The story goes that Peter was martyred, being crucified upside down, as he did not feel worthy to die as Jesus did. The statue of Peter you see on your screen is in St. Peter's Square in the Vatican. Have you heard the story of Paul's conversion on the road to Damascus? Pause the video and read Acts chapter 9 verses 1 to 19. Let me tell you more about Paul's story. His story is written in Acts by the same author as Luke's Gospel. Paul, who was known then as Saul, was a Pharisee, that is, one of the branches of Judaism in existence 2,000 years ago, who persecuted Christians. After his conversion, which you've just read about, Paul became a prolific letter writer, writing to Christian communities around the Mediterranean, and many of his letters are in the New Testament. Paul was a Roman citizen and therefore free to travel in the Roman Empire, spreading the Christian message, which he did frequently. Paul's influence played an important role in the direction of the early church. Paul was also martyred in Rome by Emperor Nero.